Hey all, welcome to Film Suck, a Patreon podcast in which we ponder the work of art in the age of crap cinema. I'm Eileen Jones, and my usual co-host Dolores McElroy is away, still away. This week she's again making San Francisco Opera great again this summer. But I am delighted to introduce my special guest, Conan Neutron, who's one of the hosts of the raucously entertaining Movie Night Extravaganza, as well as the lead singer, songwriter, guitarist of the rock band Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends, which just finished a lively tour of various American cities. Hope you're not too exhausted. Welcome, Conan.
Thanks for having me. Now, it's great to be on. As you well know, longtime listener and fan. So always a pleasure. I can never replace Dolores, but I choose to do her honor by doing my thing in her stead.
I have total confidence. And I just thought I'd kick off. We're going to be talking about director Howard Hawks, the legendary Hollywood director. And you were the one who suggested the topic, and I was, of course, delighted to have it go as something to talk about for today's episode. It's hard to cram it all in, but what made you want to talk about Hawks?
Right. So this came off of a recent rewatch, as well as visiting some Howard Hawks films that I hadn't seen in somewhat recent memory, and just kind of noticing a trend. So the why would be, in his filmmaking, there's a definite lack of preciousness and hand-holding. And I feel like Hawks made pictures for smart people, but then assumed, rightly so, that the rest of the audience would follow suit with reactions to what the smart people gave. So they'll laugh when they laugh, gasp when they gasp, so on and so on. I keep coming back to a quote he gave, which is, "I don't make films to win awards, I make films to entertain." And I think that's relatively timeless for almost all of his work. Lack of pretension with the craft, and just like an almost aggressive disinterest in it being perceived as art makes it very approachable. Right. And the form and aesthetic make it more realistic, and you get the kind of, but you also get the kind of heightened realism that many of us go to the movies for some manner of escape and entertainment. But it's different from the fake, like, "Ah, shucks, I'm just folks," false modesty. Like, he never did that either. I think the reason why his stuff works and has salience to this day is because he considers himself a storyteller first, not an artist. So it's no shocker to me that someone like John Carpenter is a huge fan, because it shows in all his work, not the least of which including that Assault on Precinct 13 is basically a remake of RIO BRAVO. But you're invited for the ride, but you aren't going to be spoon-fed all the information. Like, you don't need a flow chart to keep up. But you will see the human frailty, heroics, tragedy, so on and so on. And then for a filmmaker like Quentin Tarantino, of course, just in case anyone was wondering, you don't have that, without Howard Hawks, you don't have that kind of extemporaneous talking back and forth between characters. The lesson there being that you can pick up context of who a character is through conversation rather than a loud brain announcement. It's people talking to each other. And if a character is being spoken of, it's anecdotal instead of a ritual reading of like a bio from Wikipedia or something along those lines. And then you have real moments of real comedy mixed in with the pathos and the drama as well. There's a thin line between the two, and I think aspects of that run through all of his material. As for the French guys, because again, remember, Howard Hawks was, as I'm sure we'll get into, beloved by all the French New Wave guys. And when neorealism was really coming together with the French New Wave, they were looking for authenticity instead of artifice, starving for it, right? And that was common cause in a way that most mainstream filmmakers at the time were not. So as far as relevance to modern audiences, I talk a lot on our show about how everything has to be prestige now, just saturated in self-importance. Every modern filmmaker absolutely brain about the art that they're creating. And for me, and I know you feel largely the same, with rare exception, they're providing movies that have the trappings of depth and importance, but with all the entertainment value of a Potemkin village. Like, there's nothing below the surface, right? And so they're forever resigned to telling us how to feel without even thinking of showing. Hawks is the opposite. And think about the form of what he does, is showing flashbacks, overuse of close-up shots, overplotted soliloquies, and my favorite straw man, vibes instead of plot. So in a cinematic world of nutrient-free fast food and gastropub style culinary experiences that never satisfy, I feel like his films are a hearty full course meal.
Oh, very nicely done. Yeah, so you've already touched on many things we're gonna probably, I hope anyway, there's so much dive
I
into.
know, right?
We'll see how we do, God. Yeah, and just asking you this has made me think, well, why was I so excited? And the thing about Hawks that really struck me, I grew up on his films. They ran on TV, many of them incessantly. I knew
Yeah,
many of them well. And but once I got into teaching film, and of course I wanted to use Hawks films, I discovered how hard he was to teach, which is weird. I mean, and I realized how dependent I'd been on directors who really foreground formalism, like Hitchcock being the most famous example. Hitchcock is the
absolutely.
easiest director to teach in that students can see instantly what he's doing as far as the technical side, the techniques, the formal flourishes, his editing, his shot choices, his color schemes. You can go on and on, his set designs. They kind of come right, he wants them to. He's a big expressionist. He was partly trained in the German expressionist school. So it makes him very easy to point out not only all of those technical aspects to students, but then tie them into the themes, which are very coherent and pretty readily easy to follow from film to film to film, especially because he sticks to essentially to one genre, which is the Hitchcockian thriller. He becomes so associated with it, it becomes its own subgenre. Hawks goes all over the place, all different genres, and we'll get into that. He's famous for that. But he's not a formalist in that way, in that he's not showy at all. So you've got, and he
Right.
would say himself, I like eye level shots. He loved
Yeah.
mid range shooting. So you're like, medium, long shot, medium close up, medium. He's very rare that he does an extreme angle, an extreme close up of any kind. He just doesn't. Those are big deal shots if he happens to do them. And so it was grappling with how do you teach Hawks that really sort of struck me. Is like, damn, why does he have such a great impact, but it's not in some ostentatious way that it's easier to point to? I guess that's it.
You're so right. And it's because a lot of the things that became known as a style were the absence
Mhm.
of certain things. And I think that's one of the reasons why the French New Wave guys, especially Truffaut, really like just would like laser, like, oh my God, like this is
Mhm.
the guy. Because they were looking to, much in the same way that punk rock kind of came for arena rock and its success, your Emerson, Lake of Palmers and what have you. They were looking to strip things to the barest essence. And like,
Mm.
there it is right there. Like a guy consistently doing it since the 30s.
Mhm.
And not even sticking to like one form. And I think that might be something, if you think of someone, because I feel like there's been a Billy Wilder resurgence, and why shouldn't there be?
Yes,
Billy Wilder's
absolutely.
wonderful, but I think Billy Wilder is way easier to understand in a modern context.
Mhm.
But but you wouldn't have a Billy Wilder without Hawks. Not the least of which is that he basically got to start directing on stuff that he wrote for Hawks as well.
Mhm.
But again, when we're talking about filmmaking, it's the lack of flashiness that's
Mhm.
it's what makes it worse and what makes it so enduring. Like, I think you can show anyone Rio Bravo,
Mhm.
which is the classic hangout movie,
Mhm.
and people get it immediately, right? Do
Mhm.
they? And it's all right there. And he was a big, I mentioned, in my intro, he hated flashbacks. He didn't
Mhm.
like it. He's like, and so he found ways to get out the characters' motivations and their back history in a fascinating way that you have again with Rio Bravo. Look at the Dean Martin character. You first year it's like, oh, that's a sweaty looking dude. You don't know like what's going on, but then you find out like, oh man, so this guy was like devastated by this personal tragedy, and he used to be, the best there is, and like trusty right hand man, but he's in this weird like half state where he's trying like, and you have this incredibly complicated history
Mhm.
going on, but you don't have anyone like giving it to you in voiceover.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
all right there. It's all in how everyone interacts with him, including the townsfolk. And those aspects of things work in his dramas, they work in his comedies.
Mhm.
You just have it all right there. And even if the there is somewhat like bringing a baby or something where it's just like completely over the top absurdity,
Mhm.
it's there's something kind of homey about that where
Mhm.
you can just sit with the characters. And I think the Hangout movie has really kind of come into its own, for
Mhm.
better or for worse, as a genre since then, and it's his direct line to everything Hawks is doing. Not the least of which includes his overlapping dialogue. I mean, I saw a thing where he was retelling in his place in Palm Desert, was retelling something to that they made this documentary this right before he died. This German filmmaker did, and he was talking about doing the overlapping dialogue, and he says, and he was like, "Well, why don't you just overlap his line?" And like the actor says, "Well, he wouldn't like it." He says, "Well, I do." So do it. And that's what led, and it's crazy to think about that as like a narrative function, that people just didn't, everyone was like very stagey. I'm going to say my line, I will wait for you to say my line, then I will say my line. And he was so right that like in a natural conversation, and of course, being a co-host and senior producer of Movie Night Extravaganza, of course I like crosstalk, but you get a different energy. You it feels more like real people that you're watching rather than people on a stage.
Yeah, because people, as he says, people just babble and talk constantly. So he has,
That's right.
There's a great scene in Rio Bravo where the woman character, it's a typical Hawks scenario. It's a Western in this case. Where the woman is romantically interested, assertively so, in the man, very independent. She's a tough woman. Yeah. She's bold, she's honest, and she's really interested in the John Wayne character. But it means she's having to prove herself. This is a classic Hawks thing, and winds up being accepted by a little male group. And there's a scene where she is just babbling and she's getting madder and madder and she's talking over him and not letting him, and he keeps trying to interrupt, and it builds to this frenzy in which in the end, she's just like, I just talk too much. And by that point, by the time he gets to Rio Bravo, he's done this many, many times. It's especially striking because he's a guy who starts in the silent era and comes into the sound era. And for so many of those people who went through that traumatic transition, which killed a lot of careers, they were partly so careful about dialogue because they were nervous about dialogue. Like getting a clean dialogue was a huge challenge in the early years. The mic sucked. There were all these technical challenges. So it took them years. If you watch anything before, I'd say 1934, you're on shaky ground as far as how the sound is going to work and whether the dialogue is going to be just impossibly stiff and stodgy.
They just didn't know what they were doing yet, frankly.
No, they had no idea. But Hawks is one of those people who was not daunted by this transition and just moved really quickly into a kind of bracing way of handling dialogue, which of course peaks most famously, I think, in His Girl Friday, where it's so rapid.
Oh yeah, it's so. And if I can just, so I want to speak to that, but first of all, I love Robert Altman. Robert Altman, when he's great, is really great. But there is no formative Robert Altman without Hawks's, rapid fire crossing over, everyone talking, multiple conversations. It just doesn't exist. Period. And props to Angie Dickinson. I rewatched Rio Bravo just recently for this actually, and I was like, that scene's hilarious. It's hilarious. And the whole time John Wayne's just trying to like so you constantly have these flustered characters that are kind of getting the business, and everyone's just kind of circling around, and the escalation of it is just funny formatively. Doesn't even matter what is being said. Like it's something that it's a unique thing that I think it's still a Zoomer is going to identify it as much with as the Greatest Generation. And I think that's one of the reasons why when people decide to check it out, his movies, especially the comedies, I have noticed the Hawks comedies are really kind of getting a slight resurgence. Not so much the dramas though, which is interesting, but I think that's super cool. And the naturalistic stuff, I think he was way ahead of his time on it.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I mean, he really seems to pioneer. It's a strange structure in a lot of ways. In some ways, it's brilliant because it's going to work as a genre film. So he finds a way, especially in the action-oriented films, to charge the whole thing with tremendous life or death consequences. Danger, danger, danger. So Rio Bravo is a great example. There's, they've got a bad guy locked up, but his brothers have come, and all the hired thugs have come to town to spring him from jail. And there's only John Wayne, his now drunken ex-deputy that he's brought back on, but who's got the shakes so bad he can hardly function, and his elderly sidekick.
Oh, Walter Brennan, who's awesome.
Stumpy.
Stumpy, yeah. Like, and it's so great that because Walter Brennan, because he worked with Hawks on a bunch of stuff, and he was just like that guy kind of extra. And he brought him in on, I forget which movie it was, but he was just is like that, I need someone that can do some lines. Well, how about this guy? And he's like, well, you want it with teeth or without? It's like, what do
He
you
had
mean?
to play this part so many times, very endless variations, but he plays a very funny variation in this one. But anyway, so it's what John Carpenter winds up calling the siege structure, and of course he just literally
Yeah.
wholesale takes it to Assault on Precinct 13, but he returns to it over and over. Ghosts on Mars, a lot of Prince of Darkness. It's people wind up, first they're moving around the world, but they get driven back more and more into this, and into some edifice, and they're just besieged by the howling barbarians who are trying to get in at them. So, but while you're in there, the wonderful thing is there's all this danger, there's all this tension, but while they're in there, they can hang out and sing songs and mock each other and joke around and work out their feelings, and all the stuff is just, that's the hangout part within genre film, big emotional, big sensational impact. Very smart.
With a sort of Damocles, hanging over the entire proceedings, in the way that, like, and not in a bomb in a room Hitchcock way, but in a totally different way. And it's interesting just how well that works. All you gotta do is change. I mean, he did, like, hey, what if Rio Bravo but in space? Carpenter did. I'm like, that's not one of my favorite movies, but I was like, oh, I get what you're doing here. That's awesome. That rules.
Yeah.
And you get. Again, you find out about these characters by them speaking to each other and how they speak to each other, and like little moments. I mean, even like, the Walter Brennan character, when he finally, you hear his entire backstory in like one line, right? That is like him talking to the fellow that they have popped up about, like, whatever, this acreage of land may not seem much like you, but it's everything to me.
It was everything.
And it's like, and you're like, oh wow. Okay, so there you have, like, what would be in some bloated streaming series, a bottle episode of like, all right, here's Stumpy's backstory about how he lost the farm to this guy. And it's like, yeah, you don't need any of that. You get it immediately. Like, oh, if you're paying attention, you're like, oh man.
Yeah.
So, because before you're just like, oh, he's just like, he's the guy. He's
just a sidekick.
He's just a sidekick. Yeah, he's funny, but like, oh no, there's a deep pathos here as well. And he's not sitting here being like, here's my grief and trauma and how it externally. No, man, no one's doing that. And that I think just works so deftly and so cool. You also hit on a point to in Rio Bravo about the Angie Dickinson character, right? Which just led me to, and I think there's been some kind of talk about Hawks and like the Hawksian women, right?
Yeah, tons, yes.
And I saw a great quote. The type of woman who I've used on the screen has been a rather straightforward, honest person. It isn't the girl who meets other girls and has cocktails and plays bridge and things like that. They like to ride and hunt and shoot, do things. They don't usually like other women. They prefer to be with men. If they don't like something, they come out and say it. The kind of person that I like. And there's just a long history of it. And it's something where it's very ahead of its time in that it predates, women's lib and whatnot in a lot of cases. But you also have things that, like in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. That's a movie about female friendship.
It's a buddy movie for women, which is a rare thing. Yeah.
And he talked about it in terms of, instead of being like, two sailors going out and trying to carouse with women, it's the other way around. It's you got two women that are running around
after men.
Doing and just how that turnaround makes it so special and interesting and cool. And by the way, Marilyn Monroe, obvious icon and astounding, and rightfully venerated, was the greatest actresses as far as just presence and what have you. But that's Jane Russell's movie.
She's never better. In fact, I would say they both are crystallized as stars in that movie. He's a wonderful star maker and star perfecter, and they're never better. They're literally never dressed better, never made up, but they never look better. Their personas are never more delightfully realized. He just had a gift for Hitchcock again was like him in this. They could look at an actor, perhaps an already established one, in which both of these women were, even though Marilyn was a new star, but still she was a star. You look at them and be like, what other qualities, or what qualities aren't being brought forth enough? And you could just see. And so we'll get into more like stars he found, Lauren Bacall being the most famous one. He just makes her a star. He brings James Caan in for the first time. Montgomery Clift, who's famous on stage but not in film, is brought in Red River. He does this over and over and over. But let me quickly speak to the point about the strangely feminist appeal of the Hawksian woman. which is true. There's so many delightful women characters, so many women characters that are never better by actresses who are never better when they play. Rosalind Russell in His Girl Friday hits her career peak.
Oh,
If you ask me,
she's so great.
she's so great.
She's so great.
But he was the opposite. He was anti-feminist. He was a Republican. He was pretty conservative. He was a right-wing guy. He was certainly trying to live the manly man life of his era. A lot of machismo going on. In Daredevil Pursuits, he was, a big aviator, loved to fly planes and race cars, and everything he did was very outdoorsy. All of his male friends tended to be macho guys. And so, but that he had a lot of insight into, look, I know women who, and they're nothing like we're presenting them on screen, and they're not what I like to present on screen. That's great. But also the tensions between men and women at a time when the gender binary is being so strictly enforced that you're getting these just ridiculous male versus female, caricatures that are built into the culture. There's so much anxiety over gender and sexuality that it's at a huge extreme at a time when Hawks is working. And so his bringing together men and women in incredibly tense confrontations often because they can't get along and they speak in other ways. And she's an unusual woman, and that can make her suspect. She's living by her wits. She's out there. She's a showgirl. She's maybe she's a card shark. That's what Angie Dixon is. She's both suspected of being. They're often a little shady because they're women with sexual experience. That's always getting judged harshly initially. And she's a pro and can handle herself, and she's tough, and she's got a past. So all of that's also got to get negotiated beyond just the mere battle of the sexes that was such a topic for so many years. So he's really insightful and unique about all of that stuff, and that is on all of his films. It's hard to find a film where that isn't being worked out.
That's right. And I think it's worth noting too that, of course, Hawks was a Republican in the era of Truman was the Democrat, sure, where it's who again dropped the A-bomb. So yeah, he did support Dewey.
He's also a rich kid. He's money, Midwestern industrialist money.
He's too early for what we would call a Rockefeller Republican sort of style, which isn't to say that the type of thing what the Republicans are calling themselves now. And the reason I mention that is that I feel like there's so many great master filmmakers that are ready to throw away an entire filmography if their politics don't strictly align with what the viewer is watching, and I find that to be a shame. Now, there's also people and this is a different podcast, but Elia Kazan, where it's he also was a snitch, and was it because even if you even Gary Cooper, even they also another right winger. Along with Barbara Stanwyck, and it doesn't make Ball of Fire any less entertaining.
Any less great. Exactly.
But, he also, went to war ostensibly for a very leftist screenwriter whose name I'm forgetting, who was getting persecuted. And basically did everything he could. So it's one of those things where the political division lines were not exactly what they are today. Mm-hmm. And of course not. I mean, some of these movies, dude, Scarface is almost 100 years old. I was thinking about that. I was like, holy crap, 1932. Jesus H Christ. I mean, so that's how far back this guy goes. But I think it's notable that he caught flack for His Girl Friday, astoundingly, for making it less political, but by the same token, Rosalind Russell is would fit in fine in a Safdie movie. You know what I mean? Roswell, the Hildy character could be today, and it would be totally fine. And you've got Cary Grant and her bouncing off each other's insane jibe-filled crosstalk. Just it's a
she's the big talent in the film. She's the great writer. That's why Cary Grant. If you don't know His Girl Friday, you ought to. I just quickly explain. It's about newspaper men, which they keep using this term. She keeps using it. She winds up saying, "I'm a newspaper man," because there's no slot for her again. It's kind of pre any kind of enlightened attitude about women working. She's just the girl reporter, which would have been the demeaning term, who comes to the fore through just tremendous talent and her completely fraught relationship with the editor of the paper, played by Cary Grant. Her role was famously initially a male part in the front page. Howard Hawks, looks at the front page. He says, this is a love story between the two of them. And he often did love stories between men that were equally, if not more, filled with emotion than the love stories between men and women. But he's like, I think it'd be great if we made the Hildy Johnson character a woman, and it'll turbocharge so many of these scenes. So yeah, he just for context, so you get it. So you get how she's situated as being driven. But she's also the one with the big conscience in the film.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is all played extremely well for comedy. Like the origin of like phone work, that's because we're talking about, this is 1940,
40,
right?
yeah.
I think about like the Christopher Guest stuff, the Coen brothers, obviously. 70s Altman, Fish Call Wanda, even like this all goes back to something where he thought it would be more interesting. Well, why don't we make this this is how they'll play off each other, and she's in a man's world, but she's not only holding her own, she's like one of the best. And it's incredibly forward thinking in that way, of it being kind of focused on like, well, I want pithy retorts and amusing asides, and that's a whole new world of these two playing off each other, which is just so frenetic and so some of the references obviously are going to be dated, but the interactions, you're just like, how can you not be charmed by this? How can you look at this?
That one's surefire. If anyone wants to see Cox at his greatest, I always say either that or Ball of Fire.
Yeah,
I think the reason the comedies can be sold so easily is because they still work. So the pace is so brilliant, and the performances they remain hilarious. Yes, dated scenarios, but it doesn't intrude on a kind of basic level of thrill, and the complexity as well. Especially his Good Friday is built in a world that's just pitch black, super dark. There's a central scene of a young woman, a tormented, clearly a sex worker, though they kind of shade that a little bit.
Dance around it, yeah.
Who to save a downtrodden prisoner who's about to be hanged, that she has a very tender little relationship with, leaps out a window, and you think for sure died. She turns out doesn't die, but she's not in good shape because she jumps out of like a, I don't know, third-story window.
Yeah, it's not great. Yeah.
It's horrifying. And so this dark horror is in the middle of it, and only Hildy has what we might consider a normal human reaction to these things. The other newspaper men, even though we see cracks, are hardened, and there's nobody more hilariously flinty and conscienceless than the Cary Grant character. It's wonderful. There's no one he won't betray. There's no lie he won't tell. He'll do whatever it takes to get the story and get the scoop and have it on his front page. He doesn't care what.
So blinders on about all of it, right? I think you're right that like the dialed up near absurdity of this kind of thing actually serves it well for a modern audience, but then also gives you like real heart. Yeah. And how much of that is do we find now, where it's like, yeah, we'll get the dialed up absurdity, but it's stuff it's heartless, just like no heart of any kind. And then you also have look, I know you're mixed on him. Ari Aster, no surprise, loves Howard Hawks. Yeah, not shocking. If you watch Eddington, which is more or less a Western, it's like you get that just cranked up, just everyone blinders on doing their thing, where it's like, 2 clicks over. I personally found it very funny, but in an absurd way, and that specific kind of feel bad way that seems to revel in. I mean, but again, I think Beau's Afraid is practically a 5-star movie, but it's for what it is, which is to say a relentlessly bad time and like stress situation.
Sure is. Yeah.
But if you're on board with that, then it does the thing in the way that it should, in the great tradition of After Hours and stuff like that. But I think it's what I was getting at is that that's where the influence of to the more I guess neo absurdist, like whatever we call this elevated manner of storytelling, that it works for that as well. Like it can be a tabula rasa to a certain degree, because you have all the comedy stuff still works, but it's the interactions between the characters that you're just like, God damn, Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell back and forth. Does it get any better than that? I mean,
and their contention is more loving than most traditionally loving relationship, because they're in such superb rhythm and because they're such equals. That's so right. When the first scene, she goes to see her ex-husband to tell him she's getting remarried. And you're like, really? You could send him a telegram. He's
Yeah,
tormenting
yeah, yeah. You don't have to like
you
do
don't
it in
have to
person.
stage another scene where they
Yeah.
hash out their whole relationship in just cut and thrust, um, you know, one-liners at each other, and they're moving in complex patterns all around this kind of his office. And it's shot in very moderate, very medium-ish, very kind of knees up, waist up shots, but pretty distant. But so you can look at just their kind of agitation. He's determined to get her back. At first he thinks, oh, she's come back. And there's a whole arc of emotion. He's all smug. And then he finds out, oh no, she's not only getting married and leaving the newspaper business, she's getting married tomorrow. And she's leaving today. And so he's got no time. And then it's, how do I plot and plan to disrupt this whole thing and keep her? I've got almost no time to do it, but that's where he lives. This is how he does everything. But that first scene, which is long, but because even in its moderation, all the eye level, all that, no fancy shots, it's super complicated as you watch all the phases of their past and present relationship playing out. And by the end of it, you know them both so well that all the jokes about them can just pay off, bing, bing, bang. You're completely clued in. And it never pauses. Again, fast, 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 which he had to coach him into. Faster, really, it's pick it up. And they were both they're friends. Rosalind Russell and Cary Grant were friends behind the scenes, but they were both consulting writers outside to get them better lines. It was no holds barred.
But here's the deal. Like, he had such a gift for talking to the actors and getting that kind of thing out of them. And the results speak for themselves. Like, it kills. It absolutely kills. And in a point where you don't need to have all of the CV of everybody involved to know the stakes, and it's a good time. And I think when like, it's one of the ones when people do a impression of, like, old movies or whatever, and like the rapid fire rat-a-tat dialogue, they're thinking of movies like this. And it's like even with the exception of maybe the Marx Brothers, right? You have this and like Bringing Up Baby, right? Sure. A couple years earlier, Katharine Hepburn. She's just a chaos agent.
Also rapid fire. Yeah.
I mean, you got an errant leopard in that one. Like, I mean, the absurdity is like cranked up.
What stops a lot of contemporary people from being able to watch older films is the pace. They can't stand the pace. It seems so stodgy compared to the rapid fire editing we're used to. You don't get that with Hawks comedies. It does not feel like it's slogging along until, and it's interesting, where he gets very old. He has a very long career from 1926 to 1970. By the time he gets to the 60s, he's starting to redo his own films, at least sequences from them. So when you get to a comedy like Man's Favorite Sport, which is, I forget, somewhere mid-60s, 64 maybe?
That sounds right. Yeah.
You're watching it just going, oh my God, they're using all these bringing up baby. There's literally restaging bringing up baby scenes between Rock Hudson and Paula Prentice. But the pace, it's just it's like Howard Hawks on Quaaludes. He's just everything is slowed. Everything that he's repeating, he did a million times better before. Directing is a notoriously difficult, physically demanding profession. So it's not unusual for people to just get tired directing.
You also get a bear riding a moped, I might add, for Man's Favorite Sport. So
you do. It's not like it's hopeless. I used to like it when it used to run on TV all the time. But it's shocking when you know the pace that he was capable of that kept comedy cracking.
Absolutely. I mean,
he just doesn't stay.
He more or less, remade Rio Bravo twice. He
does. He keeps reading the rest of the 21. Yes.
And he changes certain elements of it, so it's not exactly the same.
And Rio Lobo, which is his last film in 1970. They're essentially just reworkings of Rio Bravo. Yeah. Sorry about that.
But I like that he. So there's a couple things to speak to. So first of all, we mentioned Carol Lombard. That was his second cousin from Wisconsin, where I live, by the way. And she just wanted to be in pictures. And there's a great thing where she was working with John Barrymore, and just it wasn't happening. It wasn't good. And so he was like, all right, what would you say if this is, and he kept providing these scenarios designed to kind of rile her up and like, what if John Barrymore said this and this and this, like, well, I'd kick him in the balls, basically. Anecdotally, this is what she says. And so they're like, all right, great. Now take that feeling. And then now that's what I should see when you guys are together.
Absolutely.
And so then
he sees her potential, Carol Lombard, and she'd been in movies forever. She was she was from Silent era, Bathing Beauty kind of thing.
Yeah, and obviously iconic actress, but like
he finds her screwball comedy persona in 20th Century in 1934.
And you get this great thing where they're like, she's going this way towards him, he's going that way towards her, and it's one of those things where, like, out of the end of it, I guess, and the cuts, and John Barrymore was like, that was great. Like, what did you say to her?
What did you say to her? And all he did was fish out what would she was a famous behind the scenes live wire. Yeah, she loved big practical jokes. She was hugely social and beloved. She swore like a truck driver. She was super sportsy and athletic, and he just. He knows there's something more than the rather decorous star she's been. We can even look at photos of early Carol Lombard. You're like, is that Carol Lombard? Because she just is so tamped down. He finds the dizziness, the delight, the fizz of Carol Lombard. And he also helps us find screwball comedy. He's at the forefront of a couple of genres. Scarface is one of the 3 founding gangster films. So that with Public Enemy and Little Caesar.
I watched it last night, and by the and I'd seen it like years ago when I was a kid. I was like, I better rewatch this. And the thing I remember most, A, it was really violent because it's pre-code.
Very.
And then B, everyone had hats. Those are the 2 things that I've remembered. But I was like, there are scenes that you have people that like they try to kill the one guy and then you didn't get him, so they go to the hospital with like the flowers. That's like how, and it's they gun him down. It's like how many times have we seen that in the gangster movies? It's like, oh, that's right here. And then but then there's also that beginning of, hey, so all this stuff is like ripped from the headlines, basically. Your government doesn't seem to be doing anything about it. Government is buying for the people, huh? Anyway, here's the movie. And it's something where it's crazy that movie is almost 100 years old because it still goes. And honestly, I like it better than the De Palma Scarface because the De Palma Scarface is like, you can cut about an hour of it. He's not interested in any backstory. He's not interested in like, how does he get to be that way? Who cares? Like, move on, And I think that works so well. And I didn't mean to derail your point on that, but that goes back to the other point of just being, he liked to shoot things how they are, not like come up with like super stylized version of it. And he apparently did that in one movie. I forget what it is. It's not one I've seen, but like he was friends with Murnau, and Murnau was like, oh wow, I'll do some of those things. And like, I guess he
there's one film where he says I forget the name of it now, and where he's influenced by Murnau. He does all this expressionist stuff and then realizes it's really not for him.
Well, and then they also the studio held it for a year, and I guess by the time it came out, everyone else was doing it. So it's like, no, it looks like it's just ripping everyone off now.
Right.
But this is one of the ones that like I think they haven't done a restoral of it. Like it's real hard. I haven't seen.
I've never seen it either. There's a few that are obscure and it's hard to get a hold of. Yeah.
But it's
a great example of when he would use it very selectively. There is a very dramatically angled expressionist shot in His Girl Friday that is startling if you watch a lot of Hawks, because he almost never does this. It's when Hildy Johnson is interviewing the condemned man in his cell. It's a weird scenario, almost like a Hannibal Lecter cell within a huge jail room in the jail and in the prison.
Jonathan Demme was thinking of that scene when he did
you're totally thinking Silence of the Lambs. But it's this little pitiful guy who was out of work and is getting a little mentally addled and wound up shooting a cop, and now they're going to kill him. So anyway, she gets up to leave, and it's really like, and it's so uncomfortable because she expects him to be hanged in the morning, of course.
Yeah.
And she's going to say, well, goodbye, Earl. Good luck. And the camera just goes way subtly, but way up into a corner to look down. And why that's the right shot, I don't know. That's a very film noir shot, by the way. He almost never did those extreme angles, but it works beautifully there. So he could do a punctuation periodically, a flourish, but it was just rare.
Well, and when he did it, it almost counted for more. It's like we did close-ups. He didn't like
exactly.
He thought people were overly reliant on close-ups, but then like when you do get a couple, it's like, oh man, like this is fantastic. Oh wow, this is like notable. Not to jump around too much, but Lauren Bacall, it's like when you have that like again, it's been homaged in cartoons, like lots of Looney Tunes and things along those lines. But into Have and Have Not, which, you know, at the time you got to remember, contextually, 1944, it's considered like mid-period Howard Hawks because it's suffered by being, it came out around the time as Casablanca, right? It was like slightly after that. But like you have Lauren Bacall, and it's like, this is one of the reasons why we know who Lauren Bacall is. Like, it's just like, she's just absolutely, and again, another
reason. He makes her a star overnight. I mean, yeah.
And he talked about like, you know, to whistle, don't you? Like that scene is, and it was like, yeah, it's a great line. I don't know where I'm going to put it. And it's like, well, why don't we just have it happen in a hallway? And I think Faulkner
is the
wrote
one
that, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, but he was like, they would have these back and forths with him and his writers, which I think you mentioned, and we should get into that, just how great of a symbiosis that is with him and the writers. That one of the greatest lines in cinema. And you have this thing, and in real life, you have Bogey and Lauren Bacall kind of, you know, having real honest attraction as well. And you also have, you know, the terminally horned up wolf character that shows up in the Looney Tunes. It's like, it's like terminal lust for that Lauren Bacall scene specifically. And so you ultimately you have all this stuff going on. You know, I think Hemingway is both good and overrated at the same time, frankly. But you know, classic anti-fascist cinema that also happens to star making turn, and starting like one of the great Hollywood romances and partnerships and power couplings to a certain degree. Why was I talking about this?
And it's a role that's so great. She, you know, people tell.
He uses a close up there, and it's like the only time he does it, like, that's great.
And he does the famous pan up the length. She was very long and lanky. She was working as a model when they found her.
Oh, man,
her face was on the cover. Slim Hawks, his wife at the time, was essentially Lauren Bacall. She was a trendsetter stylist. She was athletic. She was independent. So Slim Hawks sees this image of her on the cover of a magazine, says she looks great. They bring her in. They Slim Hawks her. She's literally wearing a suit that's a Slim Hawks suit. Slim Hawks was, again, much admired in terms of fashion. So anyway, yeah, there's a famous pan up Lauren Bacall's entire lanky body as she leans insolently in Humphrey Bogart's character's doorway, and she's looking for a light. She's got a cigarette hanging out of her face. She's 19, going on 35.
Right, and single-handedly keeping smoking going for about 20 years.
Oh my God, it's so erotic from the moment you see her. And yes, it stops on her face and the whole world stopped. She was like, a star on that instant, and in fact, she was so effective. I forget who it was. Somebody famous told her, as you know, they came out of the first premiere, "You will never top that film." And she admitted, in a way, I never have. I was so perfect. She couldn't act. He had to coach her through everything. She was so nervous. She's told the story a million times. She was shook all over, and she would duck her head. And so it was how that whole putting her head down and looking up at Bogart, which looks kind of sly and sexy as hell, was like, I was keeping my head from shaking. So it was legendary for the way he did a kind of Hitchcock. He said, I'm going to make a woman in the image of my fantasy of the perfect woman, which of course his wife at the time was the embodiment, as close as you could get in the world. And he just was very controlling of her. In fact, there was some contention with Bogart because he was after her too, sexually, and she of course went with Bogart. But you know, he creates such a great character that even though she's also great in The Big Sleep, there's nothing that can compare to that star-making shot. It's also, that's the shot that is used as the example of the male gaze in Laura Mulvey's famous theory of sexist cinema, where, you know, the whole movie stops to basically adopt the look of the male star and presumably the male director behind the camera. And so we're all aligned in the male gaze that, you know, that objectifies the woman sexually, yada, yada. True enough, fair enough. But boy, for once, do you have something worthy of the amazing quality of that shot? I don't think you can do a shot like that for everyone. You have to have someone who's really can be a star at the end of a shot like that, or it's not going to work. So, you know, fair enough. It's not like, you know, these are enlightened people. When it comes to this stuff, it's not every year isn't 2026. It's a very different time. But it's still, in terms of stardom, plotting, character introduction, all of his best things. It's wonderfully casual at the same time, it just knocks your socks off. So he could do that. He could be utterly sensational while seeming to be loose and casual in his handling of mise en scène, in his staging, which was really remarkable.
Yeah, and I think that there is a feminist reading that says that, screwball comedy, not that that's what that one is, but that as a genre is inherently feminist, because usually the motivating factor is a female character who not only has agency but is basically driving the plot. Certainly in like a bringing up baby kind of situation, but it was definitely interesting, because one of those things, it's like, wow, I never really thought about that, but I guess it is true, and it's one of those things where it's entertaining as well. And if it wasn't entertaining, it wouldn't stick with it. I mean, he said, a quote, Hawks quote was, I think girls who insult people are very attractive. Which, amazing. What is the, gentlemen prefer blondes, like Jane Russell. That's like, she gets all the best lines.
Yes.
And it's one of those things where, okay, yeah, maybe it is coming from a sexualized place. Shocking newsflash, everybody. People have attraction to whoever they have attraction to. But I think you get such interesting characters out of it in a way that I feel like, when you see that in modern movies, it's kind of the exception that proves the rule. Like, it's more like, all right, this is this kind of, all right. And then everybody's hip. Everybody's hip, but not clever. Like, and that's something where, think about it. And granted, it's still in my mind, because I literally, I watched it last night, but Ball of Fire, which is in the grand tradition of Barbara Stanwyck torturing nerds, like the dudes that, and so for people don't know, these are like you have Gary Cooper and a bunch of old farts are trying to make an encyclopedia, and they're sitting there and they're like, oh, there's all this slang that's like outdated, right? Which was an insane conceit to get like nerd Gary Cooper, hilarious conceit in and of itself.
Yeah, exactly. He's always in war films and westerns and everything, and outdoor guy, and then suddenly he's this stammering nerd boy.
Yeah. Which is like, all right, fine. But it's great casting, and it works so well because, through what the plot contrivances that happen, she's trying to hide out with these guys, and you just get the reaction of, like, none of the Professor old guys are cool. They're basically the Seven's worst, like a remake of like Snow White, and like
they're all sheltered. They've all lived a life in books. They're all fascinated by her because she's someone who's street smart as hell and tough and raucous and hilarious, and they're all just agog. And yeah, that's what I found. I have to read this quote from, this illustrates how revered he was. Hawks was among the French, the Cahiers du Cinema crowd. But listen to this take by Jacques Rivette. This is actually a pretty famous essay revering Hawks by saying his vision, quote, involves the fatal stages in the degradation of a superior mind. And he's talking about bringing up baby, Ball of Fire, monkey business, where these intellectuals with glasses or without are the superior mind that is being kind of brought into a state of the primitive, often being driven there by not only that craziness of the world, but also the woman who's completely part of the craziness of the world. That's such a hilarious statement.
Oh, it's so film crit. Yeah, it's like, all right, yeah, okay.
I mean, if you look at Cary Grant in either Bringing Up Baby or Monkey Business, he's the perfectly charming, lovable but obtuse, again, bookish. Poor Cary Grant in Bringing Up Baby is going to marry Miss Swallow, who's his assistant, who sees their marriage as just a continuation of his work. And he's like, well, gee whiz, Alice, everyone's got to have a honeymoon. And she's like, we haven't time because we have to build your brontosaurus. And so he has no life at all. And then he meets the liveliest woman in the entire world who's after him. It's Cary Grant. I mean, it's Katharine Hepburn, who, by the way, had not done comedy. And Hawks always tells how she was really struggling because she was trying so hard to be funny. She wasn't funny. And he had to coach her out of trying. You can't try to be funny. You take it seriously, we'll find it funny.
That's so key. And again, I always extol the praises of Margaret Dumont, who was a serious actress, but is best known for being the straight woman to the Marx Brothers. Because the thing is, you have those guys just like flying around like whirling dervishes, like a zip, 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 zip. And if the person they're talking to is also like in on the joke and clever, it's not
It's
funny.
not going
It
to work.
doesn't work.
Exactly. Yes.
And it's something that I think a lot of modern movies suffer through is nobody wants to be the straight man. It's like, well, without the straight man, there's no comedy.
Yeah.
And this is a perfect example of that because, Hepburn is again, absolute chaos agent, right?
Yeah,
Permanent
absolutely.
state of anxiety and befuddlement by Cary Grant. And you just have like, you wandering from like this to there. And so it's a little bit less high octane than something like Duck Soup, right? But you get these huge laughs because you're just like, you're thinking like, well, I don't even know what I do in this situation. I don't run. Like, I mean, like, you don't have a situation where like you have empathy for both the awkwardness and the tribulations, but then also you're laughing because it's deeply funny.
It's deeply funny, and it really was a very modern view. That's again part of why Hawks comedy especially can thrive is you almost always have an old-fashioned man whose rhythms are still old-fashioned too. He's quite slow on the uptake and everything.
Yeah, right.
And running smack into the modern world in the form of some woman who's completely comfortable in it. And Katharine Hepburn with her she always had that rapid staccato delivery anyway. Amp that to the ceiling and tap into her.
To great effect.
Oh, she's tremendous. You bring out her gift in comedy, and from then on, she's off to the races every time she's in comedy. She's great in comedy. But she's also got, her natural kind of bossy exuberance. She loves life. She's accustomed to running things and doing whatever she wants. She's the madcap heiress figure, which was a big part of screwball comedy for women. It's a way of giving them power. If they're not madcap heiresses, they're what they used to call working girls. That didn't mean sex workers. It just meant women who worked. So those are the two lead female figures in screwball comedy, because it's very much a genre that's concerned with, well, what happens when you've got the so-called new woman, as they used to call them. A woman who's now independent, of independent means one way or another, used to living on her own. She might even be horror sexually experienced. She's wised up to the ways of the world, often more than the man, though not always. Sometimes it swaps, and she's more sheltered, and the man is a working class guy who's going to show her the ropes. That's like it happened one night. But that figure is a thrill to watch still. I mean, some of these women are playing roles that are better than anything women have now.
That's what I'm saying.
You're watching them going. And famously, the critic Molly Haskell said this back in, I forget, the 70s or 80s. She's just like, I look back at 30s, 40s films with these powerful women stars, and their roles are better. The screwball comedies, the Bette Davis melodrama, there's just like these sensational, Titanic, complex, great roles that have so much power. And what have we got now? We're more quote unquote liberated, and we've got way worse parts to play.
Well, so everybody's jocular without being funny, and everybody's in on the joke. Yeah, and that is something that I hope someone will crack the code by like literally just not doing that, and have it be a huge hit, because it's exhausting. Yeah, and people ascribe it to the MCU. I was like, this is not the MCU. This was happening like way before that. Like this is a problem we've had for like the last 30 years. And most of my favorite films, what comedy or not, like they have that contrast. They have that storytelling mechanism in place where not everybody's on the same level. I mean, and this is not, Hawks did it, Hitchcock did it. This is not new. We know how to do this, and you have access to like see these movies and learn from them.
I mean, then think of like Hawks, even though admittedly he loved to tell tall tales about himself, so you can't always trust him. But the things he would say about movies and his own reaction to them were often very astute. He wanted to make hits. He really did, because it gave him power and it gave him independence. He might have signed a contract, but he'd insist on loan outs to all the other studios. So he was always cutting separate deals to do what he wanted to do. So he got autonomy early on. But the only way to do that, again, Hitchcock move, you have to deliver hits and they have to know you can. So when Bringing a Baby, which is amazing today, because it's such it was one of his greatest films, it just bombed out.
It's badass.
Just bombed. And he studied his own thing and went, I just think the problem was I didn't have one, talk about straight man. Everyone in it's a screwball. I really needed one normal person standing there
Right.
as a reactive figure. It was too much. It overwhelmed people. And I can attest, when I used to teach screwball comedy, it is still amazes me. I hate to even say it, but certain years, students would not like, especially male students, Bringing Up Baby and The Lady Eve, two of the greatest screwball comedies ever made. But guess what happens? The woman is just relentless, just running the show to the point that the man just can't keep up, and he finally, in both cases, in the end, just resigns himself.
Just
take over my life then. But they're both genius. But and the students not wanting to say, I can't stand having the woman be that way and the man be that way, would say they would talk about that. I just don't like the relentless crazy. And I'd be like, let's say that's what you don't like.
Well, and that's so interesting because and Hawks especially, it's like, that's the kind of girl I like. That's who interests me, is like, someone
use your own. He was so great at that. That's not what my experience is. That's not what I like to see. That's not what I care. This is what makes him an auteur. I know auteur theory's been kicked around lately. No one wants to believe
which he would totally, I'm sure, be bummed at hearing. Just in the same way that
he didn't care about that stuff at all.
That incredibly pretentious quote about the the compromising of the elite mind or whatever it was. He probably would. I could picture him rolling his eyes to that.
Did.
Like, all right,
he met all those guys, and they were all celebrating him, and he'd come back and be like, "Oh my god, the things they tell me about my own film! I don't even know what they're talking about." No, he found it quite hilarious. Very
and he's such a professionally nonplussed kind of guy that that level of just critical hyperbole is like, oh my god, that's gonna knock in the way you think it is, buddy. But he's not a dick about it either. Like he was one of the things like, well, whatever. I mean, I pulled a bunch of quotes just because he's just endlessly quotable, right? Fortune favors are prepared is a good one. The one I like the best is, a good movie is 3 good scenes and no bad scenes.
No bad scenes.
Amazing.
And a director should just try not to annoy the audience. Just don't.
Oh man, there's a great So I pulled this one too. So it says he's talking to John Wayne, right?
That's the
he says, Duke, if you can make 2 good scenes and not annoy the audience for the rest of the film, you'll be a star.
Yeah.
So he always comes up to me and says, is this one of those not annoy the audience? And I say, you better believe it.
Yeah. And John Wayne's another good example of, with Hawks, not only do you find the acting ability of John Wayne, which was always in doubt in Red River, where he plays a character based on the captain, the psychotic captain in Mutiny on the Bounty. So he's a cattle baron, and during a cattle drive, a high tension cattle drive, he just loses his shit, is going to hang a bunch of men who, I forget what they even do, try to leave something. And his adopted son, played by Montgomery Clift, is like, no, you ain't. Yep. And there's a big showdown, and he actually takes the power. He does a mutiny, takes the power, takes the men, takes the cattle away from the apparently psychotic figure. And there's John Wayne, who, huge star, but everyone was always like, yeah, but he can't act. He can only be John Wayne.
Right.
Well, Hawks says, I think he can probably act. Let's see.
Yeah, and he finds... He finds what makes him interesting and cool, and it's not a surprise that most of his best movies are all with Hawks.
Hawks,
he's a dude who likes rocks. He didn't like flat landscapes. So we're talking about that. There's a great line. He says, "The badder the weather gets, the more the cameraman and I like it." Because that was interesting. And so you get those kinds of things that, we ascribe to Terrence Malick and what have you not. But this is a guy that famously, one of his greatest quotes, I'm not interested in making important films. I want to make films that people will enjoy watching.
Yes. So he didn't shrug off. Like, a film that didn't do well was like, all right, we got to course correct next time, because he was like, I'm in the business of creating great entertainment. He just wasn't having it. So I do like that, because especially given his utter confidence, sometimes you wonder about those old timers. A lot of them would be like, I'm not that artist stuff. I can't stand that, yada yada. But at the very least, they had to know they were very, very good, and he certainly did that. He was super confident. How slickly he gets into the film industry, it's incredible. Right. And admittedly, he's got money. So he's got family money to be able to invest in his own company with some made men, in Hollywood that he meets while doing macho stuff. racing cars, flying planes. He meets people like Victor Fleming and Eddie Sutherland, people like that, and gets to be friends with them.
His son became an accomplished race car driver, which was based on like his love of like cars and race car driving. He did, one of the reasons he ended up settling in it was a Palm Beach, Palm Desert, I can't remember, a low desert out there, is because he had close proximity to a racetrack. Like this is right up to his death. Like they thought that was cool.
Just the way he could angle in, and then he would be like, I like flying movies. It's flying, so I'll make movies about flying. I'm like, he could import all of his interests, and it made the films better. And we were mentioning before, he worked again, a bit like Hitchcock, worked very closely with the writers without taking credit. Very important if you're going to all buy into the word you would have hated the auteur theory of someone who finds ways to put his mark on everything, his imprint. This is what I care about. These are characters that matter to me.
That's right.
And he always controlled his editing. That's another thing. He'd hire an editor, but he was doing the editing. He
always his own editing, and it to the great success of the films. And I don't think you get, like Only Angels Have Wings, speaking of airplanes, I don't think you get something as stylish and snappy if you have just some random Joe from the studio editing it, right? But in this case, you have like, a two-fisted adventure with the interconnected relationships, cool dialogue, cool jackets, risks galore. And, you get Gene Arthur as an entertainer just passing through, you get these kinds of things that like we look at some current filmmakers and think that they're being innovative, but like it's one of those things where just the lack of pretension to it is what makes it work. And it's fascinating to me that he never tried to do the thing that I think some filmmakers of privilege come to and be like, well, I understand, I alone understand the plight of the working class. No, he never tried to do that. But that doesn't mean he couldn't find things within the characters that he did like and bring that forward in a way that inadvertently shows some of those stories. And that's the way to do it, because everyone has to everyone's afraid of acting like they don't know everything, and it's like, well, nobody knows everything, and it's exhausting that like people are expected to like have that mindset now. And I want to trash a few specific modern directors, but I'm gonna hold back for once because they know who they are, and
they know what they've done,
and we know who they are, more importantly. But I just feel like it's such an easy lesson of just chill, man, just chill. And it doesn't mean that like that you don't have to have an attention detail, because Hawks definitely did, but he approached things from this very workmanlike craft, and you can have artistry with that. But if you're beating someone over the head being like, hey everybody, it's art, yeah we get it, and it's bad art because you keep telling us that it's art. And that comes, I mean, he was a master of showing rather than telling.
And again, the deceptive casualness. It's just the story starts where it starts. There's like a lack of fanciness. You bring in, usually the male character. You establish, okay, they're in South America. I forget where. Let's pick Only Angels Have Wings. They've got this rickety little, airplane delivery concern that goes out into the wilds, and the death rate is off the charts. Outside of warfare, it couldn't get higher. Right. And these men who do this job, headed by Cary Grant, he runs the concern basically, and there's all this economic pressure. So speaking of, that's part of the pressure, is the danger plus. It's so on the edge of collapsing all the time that they always have to make another run. Is
because of capitalism,
Yeah, exactly. They developed a code amongst themselves that is super extreme. Right. It's the most extreme masculine code, I think, in any Hawks film, where basically someone dies, it's because they're not good enough as flyers. It's just like taking that professionalism thing, the admiring people who are good at what they do to the nth degree. It's only when they die. And for pretending, acting as if they've forgotten them immediately. The implication very, very strongly, nobody's going to be able to take off. They're going to be paralyzed if they have to keep grieving everybody who dies on the job. Into this walks wonderful Gene, again, peak Gene Arthur. He gets her, and she never looks better in her life than when she walks into that movie. She's an entertainer. She's on her own. She's been everywhere. She tours all these obscure places. She shows up there, and it's the most wonderful pickup scene that ever was. two guys who work with the crew come up to her like, oh my God,
Yeah.
and immediately start hitting on her and wanting to get her a drink. All she can think of, she's so delighted to hear, she hasn't heard an American speaking to her in who knows how long while she's touring around. And she's so happy and she's so unthrown. There's none of this pearl clutching, maidenly, I'm being accosted by two men.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. She's completely like, that sounds great. and fast one-liners and the same kind, and immediate camaraderie with these guys. Like, let's go have that drink. And that's how she gets brought in, meets Cary Grant, desires Cary Grant, decides to go after Cary Grant. But it's this arduous climb because, of course, her reaction to people dying is, oh my God, this is the worst thing ever. This person died. And to say we're just forgetting about them is the most cruel, heartless thing that ever was. So there's this huge climb into acceptance. That's frankly, for me, always hard to watch. I'm always just like, yeah, Hawks has taken the professional code now to a point where he's leaving.
Yeah, for an airmail procedural, right? Exactly. Where it's like, what do we do? What?
But you kind of just have to go because it's so well made, and there are wonderful set piece scenes. He was so great at just scenes where things just build. So a scene where Cary Grant wants to sing this song that he particularly likes. The chorus is peanuts. And he's terrible. Of course, they're all terrible. They're not professionals. She's a professional entertainer. She's like, oh, that's awful. Get out. And she's like, starts playing it, and he's fighting her on it. But she takes it. That's where she's a pro. And this is going to help her get her first in. And sure enough, she's playing, and there's this wonderfully timed point where he finally gets to tilt back his head and go, peanuts, which is what he's wanted to do the entire time. It's just genius, and it's this tangential thing. He was wonderful at tangents. There's a great story of To Have and Have Not. I don't know if it's true, where he claims that wonderful scene, if you've seen it. Oh, not To Have and Have Not, I'm sorry, Big Sleep, where Bogart is the woman in the rare bookshop, played by very young Dorothy Malone.
By the way, everybody in The Big Sleep, apparently any like minor business, all had the most gorgeous women you ever could imagine.
They're just popping out of the woodwork, and they're all hitting on him.
That's what I learned from The Big Sleep. Yeah, exactly.
Marlowe is just relentless. It's a very funny wartime joke because most of the men were gone and women were like, working all the jobs. And like, yeah. But anyway, he walks in. There's this very, very beautiful young Dorothy Malone wearing glasses and being bookish, and they have a whole scene together. He's checking on something people in another that he thinks are crooks told him in another rare bookstore. He checks. She knows all the information right away. Passes the Hawks code. She knows her stuff. But there's this wonderful, just erotic tension between them. Well, not even tension, they just like each other from the very beginning. And sure enough, he winds up staying. They clearly have a sexual interlude. She pulls down the shades. We're closed temporarily. And it's lovely. And he claims Dorothy Malone was just so wonderful looking that I just decided we had to do more with her scenes. So we improvised a lot of that. So that's who knows if that's really true? Probably is. Because he liked to bring
more stuff in the bookstore. Yeah.
And he was great with writers. He was friends with Faulkner. He got more out of Faulkner than anyone else. Faulkner had a very spotty career and he hated Hollywood, but he was always on call for Howard Hawks because they were buddies, and he could always get Hawks to get Faulkner in to help him with a scene or whatever he needed. So, him, Hemingway, Ben Hecht, he worked with many, many great screenwriters.
So many great writers. One of them, Lee Brackett, by the way, who also wrote a little movie called Empire Strikes Back. And we talked about it when we covered Star Wars, the good Star Wars, last year for our blockbuster season. And just real tag to that, you don't get Han Solo without Cary Grant's character in Only Angels Have Wings. Like, you just don't. Like, everything, down to the kid of it all. He's constantly saying kid, right? Like, George Lucas clearly enough of a fan that he took one of the writers of The Big Sleep to write Empire, And when people think of this stuff as like on this island of prestige or what have you, or classic films, it's like, yeah, but it's all interconnected. I mean, Hidden Fortress, Kurosawa, like that's straight line for that in Star Wars also. And you have all of these great moments and connections that just formatively is what we think of when we think of movies and when that stuff works, like the Mos Eisley Cantina, things along those lines. And it all Big Sleep isn't in, we could do a whole podcast just on the Big Sleep
Oh,
because it's
good.
insane.
There's too
It's
much to
insane.
talk about.
There's so much to talk. Like I'm hesitant to even dive in at all because it's just like once you get going, you're never going to stop. But
Mhm,
it's another example of like one of the quintessential noirs, but
mhm,
it's crazy. Like there's so much going on in it, and not the least of which is you have every librarian, railroad bookseller, cab driver, coat check girl, cigarette
mhm.
girl, what have you. Like every one of them is like the most gorgeous woman you've ever seen, and it's like to the point of like again heightened absurdity,
Mhm,
which works. It
mhm.
completely works in the world that it's built.
And
It's
that's
one of the
the
reasons
film
why
where
they
he
seem to adore.
famously says, "After that, I didn't care about being logical anymore in plots because the famously convoluted and
Yeah,
almost impossible to follow plot of The Big Sleep, where it doesn't matter, nobody cares." If you read the novels with Philip Marlowe, you don't really it's not the
it's
plot.
not about the plot.
It's
He
not
said,
about the
"What?
plot. It's about
What
the characters and the world that they're in, the dark world they're in.
did he say something about like someone came up to me and was like, I didn't understand the plot of the Big Sleep? It's like that makes two of us, bud."
Yeah. Yeah, but totally cheerful and already getting it. Like, yeah, who cares? Nobody cares. What they want to see is the sensational scene reunion of Bogart and Bacall in these roles. They want to see the Philip Marlowe character, meeting all kind of crazy people in all sorts of different walks of life, working his way through the urban maze, which is what, of course, the film noir detective almost always does. So
Mhm.
there are thrills into film noir and depths and weirdnesses and greatnesses that have nothing to do with the plot. So yeah, that fixation has always baffled me. To this day, people will go on and on trying to figure it out. I'm like, who cares? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
There's a great again. I'm going to pull from my apparently near endless collection of Howard Hawks quotes, but he said, "I don't think plot as a plot means much today. I'd say
Mm,
that everybody has seen every plot 20 times.
mm,
What they haven't seen is characters and their relation to one another. I
mm.
don't worry much about plot anymore." This is
Yeah.
like post Big Sleep, and it's like, yeah, man, like which isn't to say, and I realize this may sound like a contradiction as being a
Because we're
noted,
in such a plot-driven era where plot
right?
is not
There's too
era.
much plot, too much plot,
Too much.
like
It bores the hell out of me. God.
and like every movie has like it's like there's enough plot for like 3 movies in there. It's like
Mhm,
stop, you don't need all of that. If you're doing your job correctly, you don't need all of that. And what do you say? Style should serve the story, not the other way around. Was
mhm,
another Cox quote, which is like, I mean, yeah, man. Like,
mhm.
and you can do both. You can do both. I swear, it's been done.
Yeah.
I
I
swear
think
it.
there's an honest fear now that and the audiences have been trained maybe through binge watching series TV. I'm not sure how this occurred or if it was just the Marvel Universe stuff or what it was that got people the Star Wars thing, what got people addicted to mounds of plot developed through sequels, franchises, and series that
Yeah,
I had more trouble with it teaching film because it got so when I'm trying to get people to analyze film, they would recite plot in like insane
that's
detail.
right.
And I'd be like,
That's right.
yeah, so that's just the plot. That's the ABCs. That's where your taking off point is when you're analyzing a film. Not you don't just sit there and recite, and then this person is tangentially related to this person, this person is their cousin, but they don't know it. Because I'm just like, who cares? But that obsession really developed, and everyone started talking about story is all that was the Pixar film mantra. Everything is about
Oh
story, and
yeah,
I'm
I
like,
know.
sure shouldn't be. It
Yeah.
should take off from, but we're still in this weird era where the pile up plot is a point of pride. The what is it? Stranger Things does it. So many of the series
Yeah, and
are
it's
crazy plot
well,
heavy.
and it's like anything. You get too much of one thing, and it's going to
And
get
you start
exhausting.
missing the other. You
And you're like,
can't.
oh, whatever happened to that? I mean, you know, I mean, I'm a noted Argento hater.
Mm,
I don't like his movies. I think like
mhm,
I passively like enjoy one of them,
mhm,
and but that's a guy that's like all style. Like, and the
yeah,
reason I have it is like there is no story there, and it's like
mhm,
so I realize I'm the one saying like you can't get by it just on vibes alone, but it's like you can do a lot with vibes if there's something there to build on, and if there
mhm,
and my problem with Argento isn't that there's not enough plot. It's that like I don't care about the characters. There's no interaction. They're like cool looking mannequins being moved
mhm,
around, and
mhm,
that's the opposite of like the whether it's drama or comedy, the Hawks model of just like finding out who these people are, in situations you wouldn't necessarily expect without them saying, "Let me show you who I am. It's this,
mhm.
and this." You
Well,
find out
and what
the
they're
brains.
capable of becoming or not becoming, always in relation to the other characters that are key to their life. So again, we're back to Rio Bravo, but the Dean Martin character is arguably the most fascinating character to watch. For one thing, that's the most dramatic one because he's trying to quit alcohol, and he's gone as low as you can go. The opening scene, I think it's the opening, is when Dean Martin's character comes into a bar and he's broke and he's desperate for a drink. He's desperate, and somebody cruelly in the bar throws a coin into the spittoon, so he's going to have to fish it out of all the disgusting spit and tobacco juice. But he's going to do it. He's just about to do it. It's the lowest point of degradation.
This is how we start, by the way.
And he's all sweaty, and he's got the suit.
Oh, he's so sweaty.
Nothing, because he's literally living. He's what we would now call an unhoused person. He's clearly just he's as degraded as you can get, and he's stopped by his old friend John T. Chance. That's the John Wayne character who stops him from this final descent, and is going to wind up sort of picking him up and trying to get him back into some sort of shape through this I need your help, but really he's going to wind up helping his friend. But just watching the arc of Dean Martin's character as he tries to get through this, so when he makes a mistake, he feels it's the most crushing thing, because he feels it's part of the hopelessness of he just is not going to be, he can't quit alcohol. He's in such rough shape that he can't stand it. He's going to have another. And by the way, he's constantly drinking beer throughout. So this is not Alcoholics Anonymous approved, because drinking beer is not considered really drinking.
And there's that, I know, right? And there's that great scene with Walter Brennan, and like he's like holding the beer bottle and he like reaches for it and then he moves it back and he reaches for it, and it's hilarious, but it's also this, that's kind of effed up.
That's kind of exactly. And, the tensions that develop in one scene between him and the Walter Brennan character, and there's all of this stuff that can build within the larger tension of, okay, we're up against all these bad guys, we're completely hopelessly outgunned, what are we going to do? Another interesting aspect of Rio Bravo is the outrage, how it gets made is in part, it's inspired by High Noon in large part, because both Hawks and John Wayne hated High Noon with a passion. Why? Because the sheriff isn't a professional. This is what they always argued anyway. The sheriff is not a professional. He goes around asking townspeople. His deputy quits, by the way, early on. When they find out, these bad guys are coming to town. They're gunning for him. He's going to be outnumbered, yada, yada. And they're all scared. He goes around to the townspeople pleading for someone to be his deputies to help him stand up against these, 8 guys who are coming to town to kill him. Yeah. And of course, nobody is going to stand up for him. And it was very much an allegory. Carl Foreman, who was writing it and producing, there's a whole book on this, by the way, about High Noon and the Blacklist, was a way of treating elliptically the blacklist, where people just wind up, suddenly friendless, suddenly without community, because they've been targeted. And they're going to get taken down and no one's going to stand up for them. It's that kind of thing being worked out in film. At any rate, yes, there's Gary Cooper sweating it out in a way that's very unusual. It's very much a revisionist Western that's starting to happen in the 50s. And he's going around and this just drove them crazy. They're like, what guy who was a professional would go around asking for help from all these people who aren't professionals? And that's actually addressed in the film. Like when the people are advising John Wayne how to get more help, he's like, but they aren't going to be more help. They'll just be people get in the line of fire who are going to mess me up and get themselves killed and yada, yada. And it all comes down to who's good enough. And there's Dean Martin, who used to be tremendous with a gun. He's potentially good enough. There's Colorado, young Ricky Nelson. Couldn't make an actor out of him, sadly, but oh well. He was a heartthrob of the day.
He's good in the movie, though. Yeah.
Well, he's not acting. He's there. I mean, I like him because he's charming, but boy, he's got a glacial facial expression.
Oh, yeah. He's out of his element.
But at any rate, it's that argument that he just, and admittedly, that's going to hit Hawks where he lives. That whole, the professionalism that sustains and forms the code, the masculine code, and potentially a code for the Hawksian woman who wants to be part of the male group. And is desired. They would like to see her be part of the male group, but you have to be kind of proving yourself worthy all the time. That's another big tension in a lot of scenes. You're constantly being weighed and judged by how you handle yourself, which makes it a kind of tough world to be in, even if you're among friends, because everyone's constantly weighing and judging and not expressing their affection, their bond with you directly. There's all this joshing, mockery. It's
Coming out in
all
different
going on.
ways. Yeah. I mean, I have to say, not exactly for the same reasons, but I don't adore High Noon the way some people do, and I actually agree with some of the criticisms that it is irresponsible. If you're the designated law for a town, and you're like getting a posse
That's a very
of
macho code. What's he supposed to do when his deputy quits?
well, but it's also one of those things that's just get like random people like involved. I think we're used to seeing that as a trope, but I think it's handled well in
that's
Rio
not fair.
Bravo.
I mean, he goes around to the tough guys who are good with a
Yeah.
gun first, but he can't get anyone. So he has to go to church and say, and they're all just like, go out of town, run out of town. And of course, he's a sheriff and can't do that. I mean, it's not like I'm a huge High Noon fan, though I respect it a lot more once I've read a lot about it. The behind the scenes drama was bigger than what's on the screen.
Yeah, I just think that there's something to like how it's approached in Rio Bravo of like, well, it's cool that you want, that you want to help, but like you're just gonna get yourself killed. It's sort of like, okay, I mean, I get that mindset as well. It is definitely, but there's individualist reading, right? There's an individual.
There's a real machismo to Hawks.
100%. Oh, yeah. Are you kidding me?
Part of it is just he's asking for help. That's a line repeated in Rio Bravo where over and over Angie Dixon is smacking her head going, of course, you can't ask anybody for help because that would be so effeminate. Oh, my God. So, it's even Hawks is aware of the extremity.
He used it as a narrative conceit over and over again in lots of movies that like, this is like, not a fatal flaw, but the flaw of the male character is that they just refuse to like accept any help or any outside, even when clearly they're out of their element in every way, shape, and form.
Yes, and the people who love them have to find all these covert, tricky ways often to offer support because you can't do it directly. So there is a lot of this kind of the crippling emotional life. Of the macho man, and which, by the way, Hawks was living himself very, very much.
Well, and then think of that corollary with someone like John Huston or something too, where it's like the different and it's interesting seeing perceptions of masculinity from back then and how it's interpreted now, right? And like what does and doesn't get over, and like some things is like, and some stuff is like, oh, that's like pretty much could have happened today, and like that stuff still happens. And I think that's something that, we were talking about. It's interesting how the Hawks comedies are getting more play amongst the younger movie watchers and not so much the dramas. And I wonder if that might have something to do with it. And
I think also, it just could be an immersion. The irreverence that's built in goes down easier, I think. This kind of code of masculine behavior that's not going to be as palatable, or of essential binarism between men and women just can't get along, and what they're going to have to go through to get together is so extraordinarily fraught that it's amazing anyone gets together.
But then I also think there's a lot of he used to talk about like what a small difference it is between a good drama and a good comedy, and like finding the difference between them, and that how much he just got value out of like an audience laughing and like having that that communal experience. And then I think back, think of the state of comedy. Like it's impossible to get. First of all, if you make a comedy movie, please tell me what streaming platform it will debut on, because you'll never see it in a theater. And that's whether it's any good or not, which is neither here nor there. But then I constantly see these comedies. There's like one or two a year. I was like, God, this is brilliant. Like, but it's just no one's gonna know about it because it's in some streaming walled garden and like a fourth tier column of we don't know what to do with this. And so how do audiences find like a Splitsville or like Hundreds of Beavers or whatever? They won't. The answer is that they won't. You have to have someone
tipped off.
Someone who you trust that's going to say, hey, I think you specifically would like this and find this enjoyable. And we're in such a weird, like, everything has to be drama. Everything has to be prestige. Even Widow's Bay, which I love. I know you did as well. Moments of being very funny, but like the outrage they got got nominated for a bunch of awards, and it's like, oh, why is it being nominated for comedy? I'm like, have you ever seen what they nominate for comedy?
Oh, I know, it's ludicrous.
it's like do you know what a comedy is? Have you seen a comedy before, sir?
Well, we should talk though about a peculiarity of Hawks which is his idea of what's funny is very expansive. much
Oh,
funnier.
absolutely.
So that
Yeah.
great tale of him and John Wayne, and he wants a scene in Rio Bravo where John Wayne gets his finger cut off.
Oh, yeah.
And he
And he's
describes
like,
it
how is
to
that
John Wayne,
funny?
and John Wayne's, that is not funny. And he's like, oh, come on. But then he says, like, fine, you're not a good enough actor. Again, very macho. You're not a good enough actor to bring it off, I guess. So I'll use that bit for another actor. He takes it to Kirk Douglas for The Big Sky, which I've always wanted to see. I still haven't seen another Western. And Wayne supposedly sees that film, comes back to Hawks and says, well, now if you tell me, a funeral is funny, I'll do that scene, I guess, because it must have worked. But there are other examples of like appalling shit. And then Hawks thought was actually funny. It reminds me again of Hitchcock, who's like, who said things like, to me, Psycho is a comedy straight through. And most people are like, whoa.
What are you talking about? Yeah.
There are moments, but whoa. Taking black humor as far as it can go. So I think he had an irreverence that goes on working wonderfully. He certainly isn't like a pious guy once you get outside the code of professionalism for men, usually.
Yeah.
He's not pious. He's not jingoistic about America, even when there
not at all.
People behaving heroically. It's not treated in that awful way. He's not a big sentimentalist, again, outside of just that small area. Maybe you could argue he is, but mostly, certainly in comedy, he's not. He has a kind of take no prisoners quality in looking at life and at characters that is really can still be quite delightful. So yeah, there's a lot you can still identify with him without feeling, wow, this is oldie timey.
Yeah, I think that age is great. And I think irreverence is the correct word for it. And I guess, I'm just as an irreverent individual myself, I certainly can identify with that, but I can see where like that gets over. And I think that that's something that I don't know we don't have an equivalent of a Howard Hawks now. That's part of the problems, right? But if we did, I don't even know, like, what would that even look like?
I can't even picture it. For one thing,
I can't either.
Howard Hawks is at home in the studio system because he makes himself at home. He's comfortable in apparently any genre. He literally made a sci-fi film. He made musicals. You couldn't name a genre practically.
He's done it all. And it all is very clearly him. Even something, like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, which, that was like a thing that was like known for a while. And then he ends up making something that, again, it's one of the great female friendship movies, as we mentioned, but like influences, including Rainer Werner Fassbender, like German new wave guys are looking at just like the over the topness of the aspects of it and finding inspiration in it. And we just don't have anyone that has that kind of cultural cachet, but that approaches things like even keel is the wrong word, but there was not a lot of hyperbole to his direction, and I feel like everyone just gets so caught up in the filigree of it all that we end up with again, everybody's trying too hard to be prestige, and I think it's almost like the aspects of like and I despise the term, but like the grunge thing for music was a reaction against this like over reliance on image. And the image is everything, and this is these certain kind of images and whatnot, and it was a reaction to that, which ended up being an image of itself. He did that earlier before people were even noticing that's what he was doing, except for the pretentious peace and love French new wave guys who found so much authenticity in what he did that they just radically over intellectualized immediately. But like look like someone like so my favorite French New Wave director is Agnes Varda, but beyond that, Truffaut's my guy, right? Something like 400 Blows, and like the with all of the stuff that he did with that character, it's a clear through line to what Hawks was doing, but it was just that lack of sentimentality to it. It's like you're just telling these stories, and these stories are going to come out in the conversations. You're not going to be. You're going to whop people over the head with a big rubber mallet, which is hilarious because when people think of French New Wave, they're always thinking of Godard, and like he was Hawks would have despised how Godard worked, because he was like, let's film everything and then we'll do it in the editing. And it's like,
though Godard still revered Hawks,
dude,
but it would not have been mutual.
it was a bit of one-way admiration society.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I say this is like, there's a lot of Godard I like, but he is also completely insufferable. I think the Linklater movie that came out last year is very good, and Zoe Deutsch as Gene Seberg is actually freaking amazing. But I think it gets across both his appeal and the fact that, like, yeah, this guy must have been a real pain to be around. You know, but what I'm getting at with all that is that the interpretation of his work, the idea of entertainment for entertainment's sake, but not without talking down to people, and not without sacrificing the core intent of the writing, which again, he wasn't someone like, oh, I wrote this too. And, you know, he worked, you know, Billy Wilder, that, you know, like he basically taught him how to be a director on set for the Stanwyck movie. Ballfire. Yeah. And, you know, was very supportive of him, as people were supportive of him when he came up. But like all of his, you know, talk about Faulkner, talk about Heck, like he had a great back and forth with the writers. And I feel like, God, the auteur theory is like, yes, it's good, but also it's done a lot of damage because everyone thinks they have to do it all.
Oh no, it's just been taken up so stupidly. It's not, of course, it's collaborative. You're still collaborating, but it's in the service of the person who's going to realize a vision if they have one. A lot of directors don't. They're more what Hawks claim to be. I'm just this workaday craftsman. I'm good at my job, whatever. But what makes you an auteur is when your preoccupation, doesn't matter if it's a Western, a musical, a sci-fi, come out again and again and again and again and again, all across. When you have a basically stock company of actors you tend to like to work with all the time, stock company of writers, stock company, you're honing a vision of the world that can be your thematic preoccupations are in everything. You can recognize the same scenario being worked out differently. From this screwball comedy to that film noir to that action adventure film that's what's so amazing. I mean, he's the most extreme in being very much overwritten about, if anything, endlessly studied and analyzed as a top auteur who's not in a narrowly defined range of films, either a genre or a kind of type of highly personalized film that might be autobiographical or something like that. He's all over the map in the types of material.
It isn't just the one thing. You're right. And it wasn't Leonard Maltin called him like the greatest American director who was not a household name, right?
Yeah,
and I think
for a long time.
I think that's a lot to do with it, that it's, you know, it isn't like
again, it's not
John Ford or John Huston.
It's not Orson Welles, who the ultimate kind of artist figure who gets crucified by Hollywood. That kind of thing. Hawks is never going to go the Wells route, not only because of Wells' expressionistic, you know, techniques that are he's such a formalist, but it's all that art rolling the dice hugely in order to achieve a kind of artistic vision that was not going to be Hawks ever. First and foremost, I got to be commercially successful is his whole thing.
And he considered himself a craftsman, right? And to great effect, I might add. I mean, I even like to the point, not without self-evaluation. Like he said, like, you know, I made RIO BRAVO with John Wayne, worked out pretty well. We both liked it. So a few years later, we decided to make it again. Worked out pretty good that time too.
And I just love to think about the few types of films he can't do that are kind of defining. I mean, you can't imagine Hawks doing a family melodrama or a sentimental film.
No way.
He doesn't do family scenarios that are actually, you know, the classic family. He creates, you could argue, sort of loosely collected mini families among, you know, people who come together who are not at all related.
The quintessential found family sort of perspective, right?
That he can do, but he can't do that kind of, you know, any kind of soppiness about that sort of thing, about romance that is dewy and dreamy and with no note of contention. He can't do that. Won't do that. I shouldn't say can't. Who knows? I don't think he ever tried. So there are things that he doesn't do that are defining, I think, and that make him much more palatable to people. There are certain great directors that people have a harder time with now. So Frank Borzaghi, who was noted for his romantic dramas that were really exploring the intensity of love and romance. with a great reverence for love. That he was a huge name in his day. He's nobody, almost no one, but a cinephile who's going to know him, who studied film history, is going to know him now. There's just certain people whose worldview has not been brought forward. But Hawks, sure.
And it still works, right? And it's one of those things where the lack of sentimentality, I think, has a big thing to do with that. Like, it's which isn't to say that there's an emotionality to it, but like the lack of like treacle. Like, think of Capra versus Hawks, right? I would argue that one of the reasons Capra still works is the sentimentality.
It is.
Like that's a huge part of it. Yes. That's
it's
like it's raison d'etre. Oh, yeah. Yet it's so different. But still, great filmmaking. Same thing with Leo McCarey too. Like it's a different approach that will get you to the same place, which is an entertaining movie and a great story with great characters. But he was the one that, before anybody was doing it, was focusing on the character interplay. And it's interesting to think about that, because we're talking about through, again, as mentioned, like going into talkies, right? Let alone into like film noir and like, French New Wave and what have you.
Going easily from silent to sound, from black and white to color. Nothing daunts him.
He even talked about, was it High Noon? No, shit, High Noon. El Dorado. He was like, oh yeah, I didn't think color was there yet. But I probably should have filmed that in color in retrospect, but I didn't think the technology was there yet, which is
he didn't
crazy.
like Technicolor. He didn't like the bright oversaturated thing. Yeah. It's not like he doesn't work with color. He talks about Remington paintings, and there's a certain golden light, and he wants that in RIO BRAVO. It's not like he's not thinking about it. It's not like he's got no aesthetic side. It just tends to be, kind of on the down low.
Well, he didn't want it to be a crutch. He didn't want it to be like this is the reason for the thing. Like, it was a great it was actually I think it was one of the things we talked about in the background for this, that he was talking about doing what was the freaking one of the less successful movies was the big Land of the Pharaohs.
Oh yeah, right? Land of the Pharaohs. He talks a lot about that one.
Joan Collins.
It made me want to try to watch it again. Hard film to watch.
Yeah, I probably would have if it was like streaming somewhere, but of course it isn't. So I was like, whatever. But like, it's like, it's interesting to think of him doing like some like VistaVision, and he talked about that. Oh, well, that's like almost the opposite of what we do normally. Like, it's like everything's there. If everything's there, nothing matters. And it's like, oh my God, that's like a really interesting way of thinking about that. Because then you think about something where, the great sweeping epics with the Monument Valley and whatnot, like The Searchers or something along those lines. It's like we think about these being formative for the genres, but it's like, no, that's not what he was interested in, though. It's not that he wouldn't do it. It's just that wasn't where his area of interest was. And I think a lot of times you'll have directors and auteurs or what have you, they get caught up in things like that, like a Brady Corbet, right? Like, that it was just like, it was all about, this is where we're doing this, and it's gonna be big, sweeping in scope. I'm like, yeah, how about that second act, man? Like,
maybe you get that nailed down.
Can we work on that a little bit? And everybody's, he's just parading around, braying about how it's like this, no one does this sweeping epic scope. I'm like, yeah, but again, that second act is like, that's a full stop for a lot of people, dude. Like, and if that was your studio intervention, maybe you should have listened to them. I'm just gonna say it, because it ruined my enjoyment of that picture. I got it. And does it look cool? Yeah, but who cares? If you don't care about the characters, you don't care about the story, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. And this is why, and I hate to beat up on him because he's great at what he does. I don't like most Terrence Malick movies. The stuff I really like. I think, ironically, Badlands is probably my favorite one of his. But like, I appreciate what he's done with the form, and the visuals, but like there's nothing there for me, man. It's cotton candy.
It's very specialized. He really is a specialized director. If you don't have certain feelings for land and
Yeah,
natural settings, and it's very confined. So Badlands is also my favorite, but it doesn't seem
yeah.
quite typical, quite as typical.
Right, and
As
I get it. Magic Hour is wonderful, but I like it better in Fitzcarraldo. I think Herzog did it better.
What I love about Hawks, I have to say, and why I find that I can go back to him all the time. I watch certain of his movies all the time. I've seen him 20 times. Is he's got an attitude toward life that seems to stay contemporary because it's the way the culture has gone for lots of reasons that I'm not sure he officially cared about or knew about or thought about. I would say a lot of it was capitalism. I don't know that he would have been interested, but the way we're in a tough world that's largely a loner's, like a lonely one. We're carving our own. That's why you don't have people generally with family structures who are at the center of in any way tight family structures. Usually, it's almost always lone people who find little loosely connected groups, often professionally connected, or one person finds another, or they already have their one friend, like in Gentleman for Blonde, and that's the tight unit that goes together through the world, dealing with all sorts of crazy episodes. It's that sense of what do you do in life in the social structures we have. You're on your own. It's a rough world. It's going to be challenging all over the place. There's either dangerous people or screwballs everywhere. And
sometimes both.
what you want to find is your people. Your usually very little group of trusted people who will stick with you. And that's a line from Only Angels Have Wings.
Yeah.
You can never find a woman who will stick. It's the usual gender judgment.
Yeah.
But I think he would also say that about loyalty tests are huge in Hawks films. Why? And it seems most important because someone's got to have your back in a world that's as rough as this one. And
the found
that's
family
why
thing
he stays current for me.
I think you're dead on. I think that explains a lot of the appeal for certain viewers and critics such as ourselves. To the point, I look at Ball of Fire, right? It's like you have the ostensible seven dwarves that are just like, but it's like they're locked in their little world,
virginal male virgin world. Yes.
And here comes Barbara Stanwyck, kicking in the door and doing the conga and what have you, and like their freaking bow ties are spinning around practically. So delightful. but it works out so great because it's charming how it all comes together. And then it's when you get the turnaround on it, it's earned. Like, it doesn't feel like someone's just dropping this in to be like, all right, here's the happy ending, everybody. It's like, no, all this is like pretty hard fought, frankly. Like, there's a lot of there's a lot of
as usual
things to overcome.
All these prejudices, all these tests of character, all these that all have to be overcome before you can get to the happy ending, which is and even again, the riskiness of their enterprise, the funding for the encyclopedia constantly on the line has to constantly be, again, through sexual interaction. The woman who's in charge of the trust has a crush on the Gary Cooper character. So it's all this tenuousness that they're constantly got to be struggling. And then they finally find this one woman who can charge their whole environment and make up for with her sexuality, her liveliness, her contemporary qualities, her slanginess. She can bring everything that's missing in their lives. And now all the seven, not just Gary Cooper, all the seven dwarfs are going to live happily ever after with their racy Snow White. It's lovely.
Right, exactly. Who the house madam does not care for in any way, shape, or form, which is also hilarious.
She's got to go anyway. She's awful. She's been ruling the men's lives, and she's stodgy and puritanical. But that's a perfect example because look at the oddity of the structure of the group. If they're professionally bound together, they're none of them related except by profession. But they're this weird little social group that is interdependent, but their lives are stale and stymied. And so it's only a blessing that this person. But so you're also relying on the luck of the gods to bring your way. That you could say that with John T. Chance and Angie Dickinson's character coming to town. Someone comes in on the stage who maybe can transform your life, which is fundamentally a tough and lonely one. That kind of thing. So all that all the tangents and the quality of who knows what can happen. It could be terrible. It could be great. You could have to just go on like this the rest of your life. Walter Brennan's Stumpy. He loses his 426 acres, and now what he's got is his friendship with John T. Chance. That's what he has in the world.
And as I'm shooting, anyone doesn't holler out if they get too close. Which is, again, played for comedy effectively. But it's like one of those things. It's like, wow, that's a rough chuckle.
Yeah, he's got to stay. He's the one assigned to stay with the prisoner, and he's going to shoot anyone who comes in unannounced. So if you forget,
make sure you yell loud.
And that happens to Dean Martin's drunken character. He forgets to call out. He almost gets his head blown off, and that leads to the very tense scene between him and Stumpy. So yes, but that motif. How many times does he play that? How many times?
Yeah.
Stumpy back in the hole. Yep. He complains.
Yeah, and then he bitches about it. Right, yeah.
And remember to call out and yada yada. It's over and over, but it's because there's variation each time that does something with the interaction with the character. You don't get tired of it.
It's additive. It's additive rather than subtractive.
Absolutely.
And that is that's also not just testament to the direction or the acting, but testament to the script. Because remember, Hawks is the one he says that you can't fix a bad script after you start shooting. Problems on the page only get bigger as they move to the big screen. God, man, can we just like embroider that on something and send it to like every young director?
I know.
Because it's like one of these, why did you know this is you're stumbling on the starting block with this script. It's garbage, and more is not going to make it better. You're not fixing the fundamental problems of it.
All those cool shots will not help.
Yeah, it's not going to have all this cool shot in the world, but your script is trash. TRASH, trash. And it just comes back to like having. Well, he said Hawks was like he wanted the audience one step ahead, but never let them catch up. Which is like, oh man, that's a level of thoughtfulness that I feel like people just don't have. Maybe they do, and I'm just.
Well, it's quite a paradox. How do you stay ahead and never catch up?
Yeah, but the idea is like you. But it's again a lot of the times it's through what you're saying. There's repetition of purpose and plot points, but it's not done in such a way that it feels like someone's like, "Ding dong, hey idiot, here's what's happening."
And that is one of the big words of praise from fans about you really don't know what's going to happen because of the shifts and change among the characters and their humanity being observed under pressure. That means people can break all sorts of different ways under pressure. So you get a lot of these kind of, monkey wrenches being thrown in that repivot plots and character relations in a really nicely observant way, again, about human groups that he's very observant about.
Can I say, and this has nothing to do with that point or anything we've discussed, but I just in preparation for this episode, which I think has gone wonderfully, exactly the conversation I was looking for. I've seen some rankings of Howard Hawks films that border on the psychopathic, where but it's like one of those things where everyone's got an opinion of like what are the things that are the best about Howard Hawks films, and it's cool that you can have that difference of opinion over like certain things and nuances. Because I heard like some justifications, like okay, I see where you're going with that. Like that's not anything that exists on my planet, but like that's great that you can have that level of interpretation for something that is honestly like he never designed to be for critics. He flat out said he wasn't interested in that. I make movies for audiences, not for critics. And
didn't you say that Gentlemen Prefer Blondes was way low on the rankings, even though it's such a
dude, you had it like this dude had it like near the end. I'm like,
it's so central to Hawks. It's so hard to say, what if they're women instead of the male, male buddies? What if they're women? Well, that sounds great. Let's go.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, it sounds good. But it's also like I get it. I get that like people get different things out of it, and again, it's interesting to me that the guy made so many movies over so many, like what's something like 41 feature films or something along those lines. I read that correctly. Yeah, it's like insane. And a lot of people did that, but they're like the fella Frank Borzage. Yeah, he did who did Farewell to Arms, right? That's I think the only thing I've seen by him. But
actually I haven't even seen it, but yeah. He was
but
a
like,
silent era guy who had a big silent era and then made it into
right.
sound and did some great films in sound too.
And you have so many people that they don't ever really get out of their era.
Mm,
Right. I mean, that's a Sunset Boulevard of it all, right? Of people that just like,
absolutely.
they can't make the jump. And he made the jump multiple times, to greater effect with some than others.
Hmm.
But with stuff that he still tried to do different things and not all one genre. Like, and I think that's what makes him harder
To categorize, yeah,
to
absolutely.
categorize and for people to latch onto is like, oh
And
yeah, that's
people have a hard time tracing themes from
that's right.
they can't more see the morphing, and this is the same thing again. this is this is in General for Blondes, it's still the fraught male female relationships, it's still the tests of loyalty for friends. It's still, you can see so many of the same strains just being worked out in this musical comedy form. That's what was so malleable about his preoccupations. They could travel.
So let this podcast be a guidebook for
Yeah,
you.
yes.
This is what we're trying to say.
That's what we're trying to say. And everyone's
What
going to have a different Howard Hawks, even among those who love it, even among those who think that it's the degradation of a superior mind is what's
oh my
going
God,
on in
yeah.
monkey business, which is madness.
I love that. I love that article so much because it embodied so many things I love in one place. Not the least of which is the personal foibles of everybody involved.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
this there
We
being
all
this big
bring
like
ourselves to it.
it's like, oh my God, like this is would you be in a room with this conversation? Like, we're sitting there talking about like the degradation of the and Hawks just be like, this freaking guy. it's
Oh.
I think we need another. I mean, Linklater pulled out 2 bangers by my estimation last year.
Mhm.
I think that there should be a like whatever. Dude, Howard Hawks goes visit the French New Wave guys. Like this, like that make that a movie. Great.
Yeah, that would be cool. That would be
I'd
cool.
watch that. Maybe
He's
that's
a
what we need.
very
We need
cinematic figure, actually. They called him the Gray Fox for his silver hair, but I also think they
yeah,
meant for his sheer wiliness. That's
yeah,
a career, man. That is like someone who knew how to play the game and seemed to like glory in knowing how to play the game. And he seemed to have characters who are also like that. It's
and then
all these
everyone.
assessments of how good are they.
But he
Um,
was gregarious in a very specific way. Like he wasn't a let's go out to the bar or this social function kind of
mm.
guy. He was more like, hey, let's go hang out at my house and shoot guns and race cars. You know, all right, yeah, sounds okay.
And let's
There's
hang around with the actors and see what they've got to contribute that's going to fit this schema. And let's let me hang with the writers. And he's got a way of hanging with groups of people that gives rise to, you can, if you want to get super literal, you can see, oh, this is why he loves these loosely grouped connections.
yeah,
Where, we haven't even got into his handling of mise en scène, which again is very low key.
my God,
That if you
yeah,
force yourself to concentrate, which is hard, I know Rio Bravo, and I watched it again,
yeah,
going repeatedly. Eileen, focus on what he's doing formally.
yeah.
Even if you're not a formalist, you have to deal with the formal elements of cinema, and it was almost impossible. It just keeps
It's
sliding
hard.
back. You just can't keep your eyes on it. But I'd keep going, oh yeah, look, he's got the complex way people are positioned in an unshowy frame, or the loose way they're gathered together. It's the more you can get yourself to look, the more you're like, oh my God, he's really a pro. He really knows that how important in relation to each other. Which one is half lying on the bunk? Which
Yep,
one's sitting
yep.
at the end here? Which one's standing over here? And what does that all tell you about them if you can get your attention on it for 5 seconds, which is hard.
Right, and it's very easy to see how influential it can be to people like Carpenter and
Yeah,
Tarantino and
absolutely.
Ari
For other
Aster
filmmakers.
and what have you. That like so many people, and people make these lists, and there'll be different Hawks movies on them. Some people maybe like His Girl Fridays, some
Mm.
people maybe Rio Bravo, Only Angels Have Wings, so on and so on. But I think that there's so much there that he's really due for an appraisal. And I say that I think the thing that actually got me to like do a deeper dive was the John Carpenter, like he did like some Criterion Closet
Yeah.
thing before they were filming them, and it was just like he had like 5 Hawks movies on there. I'm like, oh, I haven't seen a couple of these. Like that's crazy though. They're like just to go that hard on one director.
Absolutely.
And then so I watched the ones I hadn't seen, and I rewatched the ones I had seen, like thinking about that. I was like, oh yeah, I totally, not the least of which is Thing from Another World, which, you know, we didn't mention. Is like, no, that's literally
the Thing.
yeah, it's like literally like, you know, what the Thing is a remake of, right? Which is
we didn't
crazy.
Can't cover it all.
We can't cover it all. There's too much. There's too much. But it's interesting to me, and I think that there's got to be some kind of critical reappraisal. Like critical reappraisal doesn't make sense though. It's more I don't know, like
I think we
understanding the treasure
a surge of appreciation. Like,
surge of appreciation. That's good. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, God, he's been written. If you do film studies and you get it all into directors, he's been written about by so many people, and it really at length, many studies of him. But they're older, and you're right. It just feels like this is someone who's always should be right. I think in contemporary times for reappraisal. I think he really is, and that everyone can have their own Hawks is wonderful. As consistent as his thematic preoccupations, his character types, his way of handling things is, they're very different films in many ways. So that I can be like, how can you leave off Gentlemen Prefer Blonde?
Yeah, I mean, why would you think that's a bad one? What's wrong with you?
You know, one of my favorite extreme statements is Robin Wood, who's like a famous film theorist, said the film that justifies Hollywood filmmaking for anyone who despises, Hollywood filmmaking, Rio Bravo is that film. And I would have been like, I never would have picked Rio Bravo. I really like Rio Bravo a lot. I just wouldn't have picked it.
Yeah, it would have been right.
I would pick His Girl Friday anytime.
Yeah.
But everyone's going to have their own pick, and there's a vast number of films to pick from. So,
and it's great. It's a treasure trove, right? And it's something where people it's always there for people to discover it, and that's one of the great things about the art form is that you know, they haven't been able to take that away from us. That you can still find most of them. I mean, some of them are a little harder to find than others.
Exactly. All right, well, we got to wrap this up. We're almost to 2 hours. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I mean, Jesus Christ! I think we said it all
at
this point. We're reaching Movie Night Extravaganza length.
So well, thank you so much for coming on, Conan. I agree. This was terrific. Really terrific to hash him out with you. This is great. You know him well, and that's really thrilling to be able to go toe to toe on any filmmaker you really love and know well. So what's going on with you? Tell me what's upcoming. You always have a lot.
Yeah. So Movie Night Extravaganza is sort of ankle deep in blockbusters right now. We just covered the original Terminator, and we're doing Terminator 2 Judgment Day. I think the day that this drops, if I remember correctly, on Tuesday, which should be a fascinating discussion. I'm a big fan of those two movies and no other movie within that franchise that should have ended definitively after 2. But I think there's a lot. I'm glad that we're placing it there because we're sort of examining the idea of the Hollywood blockbuster as what that means in general terms. And for the people that were there, again, getting out the cane, right? It was huge. Like there was no movie that was bigger. When you talk about, like, you know, special features, commentary tracks, like documentaries, what have you, it was like the quintessential, let's bilk these roofs for all they got, multiple edition physical release things. Very excited to get into that. Sean McGrath of Unkind Rewind's coming on for that. He's a great guest. Really good to have him back. We got Renee Ruin, our friend Renee Ruin, coming back for Backrooms, which is a movie I liked quite a bit. I'm a fan of the series as well. She's been a important voice on the show for years and has not been on for a while, so really excited to have her. I am watching the James Cameron movie Titanic for the first time ever for the show. By the way, I know that the boat sinks, which is something that we've talked about for years. I'm like, if we really want to do it, I will watch the movie for the show.
Wow, that's a can't miss episode.
Yeah, so if you want to hear literally the last human being in the world to not have seen the movie Titanic, I guess tune in for that episode. We'll see how it goes. I mean, it's I was a Kate Winslet fan from when she was in Heavenly Creatures, Peter Jackson's Heavenly Creatures, and there's every reason why I should have seen it. I just didn't. And then at a certain point, it was just like, do I really need to see this? And the answer is yes for the show. But we got that. And then, of course, we're going to be covering Nolan's Odyssey as well.
Of course.
And then we're going to explore the Nolan Batman films because we cover a franchise now every year. We did Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, so on and so on. So very busy. I'm going to need an art house cleanse in September, I think, for sure coming up.
That's a good month for it. Start in the fall.
But Movie Night Extravaganza, Tuesdays, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific, streaming live, podcasted later everywhere. There's a Patreon. Subscribe if you like this kind of stuff. Eileen, I think you've been on a lot lately. I feel like in a good way, and that's great. You know,
actual guest.
We don't just do new releases. We do a lot of classic films as well, usually in the covers of theme months, things along those lines. It's a wildly raucous and show that it features a lot of crosstalk, just like Howard Hawks movies. And but I am told it was both irreverent and informed, which is my love language for sure. So stay tuned for that. And and then Conan Neutron Secret Friends hitting the West Coast in August. Sacramento, San Francisco, Eureka, Portland, Seattle, so on and so on. NeutronFriends.com. And just got back and we're going out again. But neutronfriends.bandcamp.com for my music as well, protonic-reversal.com for my other podcasts. But if you're listening to this and you don't listen to Movie Night Extravaganza, well, we have sassy broads on that show as well. So.
Yes, exactly. Highly recommend it. And that is it for our episode entitled Howard Hawks, the Ultimate Professional. Thanks, dear listeners, and of course, triple thanks to our subscribers who keep us in tame leopards and hard liquor. If you're not a subscriber yet, but you like what you hear, please consider signing up for Patreon for all the film set content instead of just the half that's available to the public already. And half is also now available to view on YouTube. It will be including this one starting on this coming Tuesday. You can follow news of the podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Join us in 2 weeks for more lively film set conversation. Until then, we wish you happy viewing, everyone. Try Howard Hawks. Bye. You heard it here first. Bye.